and welcome to another episode of Half Court Press. We're back in studio. He's Wilson Moore. I'm John Walker. And we're going to guide you through some basketball talk for the next half hour or so. For people sticking with us after, a long season of pods, welcome back. For people just joining us for some off-season news, welcome in.
Yeah, happy to have you.
It's been an insane off-season on both ends of I-80 so far. Creighton has been very busy. Nebraska has been very busy as well. And that did not really stop in the past week.
It did not.
They both had things happen. A couple of assistant coaching hires. Notable? Any notable or anything?
I think, one will have a few more ripple effects on the program in years to come than the other.
Maybe.
But, just a little bit.
And then Creighton added somebody else, and they're both still trying to, out of the portal anyways, and in both of these teams, Creighton and Nebraska are trying to piece together the final couple of holes in their roster as we are now officially done with the 2024-25 season.
Yeah.
Before we talk about all of that, Wilson, how the heck are you, man?
I'm doing pretty well.
That's good.
It smells like spring outside. You notice that?
Unfortunately, my allergies. So, I wish it didn't smell like spring, but it does. It's nice.
I like that it smells like spring.
I won't be able to smell it here soon, so. Yeah. It's nice. It's nice while I can, I suppose.
I can describe it to you after you can't smell anymore.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Man, it's just been busy, right? We've both been settling into the off season as much as the teams will allow us to.
Yeah.
And they haven't allowed us to.
They haven't. I mean, the last time we recorded, Nebraska got 2 commits that day.
Yeah. And I think that throws us right into it, Wilson, because less than 24 hours after our last episode, I believe, or less than 48 hours after our last episode, Creighton announced officially that it was, first off, before I really dive into it, this was like the worst kept secret in college basketball.
Several weeks in the making.
Yes. And if you don't know what we're talking about off of that, I don't know how you wouldn't. But if you don't, Creighton announced that it is officially bringing back High Point head coach Alan Huss, lifelong Blue Jay, really. Played for Dana Altman, worked under Greg McDermott for 6 seasons. Then he left and took over at High Point for a couple of really successful campaigns. And now he's coming back to Creighton as, in the immediate future, Greg McDermott's associate head coach. But in the long term, as you noted, Wilson, the Blue Jays head coach in waiting to succeed McDermott whenever he retires, and what I was told will probably be the next couple of seasons.
Yeah, that's
insane.
That is a major decision to make, to not only say, just to take that step, that preemptive step of, we're not going to do a coaching search in 1-2 years when Greg McDermott retires. We want to do this now. We want to make sure we're set up for the future. And that's I feel like that's not a step that every program would be willing to take. But I think it's twofold in Creighton's case, where you get McDermott's successor. You don't have to go through that in a few years. It's a guy who has won as a head coach. And now you effectively, that makes for a pretty strong coaching staff when you have 2 guys who have been successful head coaches on the same staff.
Yeah, and the question was, who are they going to replace Ryan Miller with? He has shown through the first month of the offseason, 3 weeks of the offseason, really, whatever it is, that he can bring talent to Murray State, and he had that same recruiting prowess when he was at Creighton. So people were like, he quarterbacked. He was the middle linebacker for Greg McDermott's defense his first 2 years. Then Ryan Miller was the quarterback of the offense the past 2 seasons. But he's a recruiting guru at the end of the day. That's like his calling card. And so it was like, who are you going to get to replace a guy like that? Well, you went and got a heck of a recruiter because Alan Huss has ties from his time at La Lumiere in the high school circuit. And then he was at UNLV for a little bit, so he's got some ties in that region. Okay, well, he was just at High Point in Carolina, so he's got ties to that region. And then, obviously, he was at Creighton for 6 seasons, I think from 17 to 23. His last year was the Elite Eight run. So, yeah, all of that to say, they got the recruiter that they lost with Ryan Miller and then some, because obviously – now you've set yourself up for a seamless transition once McDermott decides to retire. Yeah,
which I think is especially important in today's world of college basketball, where when a coach leaves, whether that's getting fired or retiring, you see usually most of the team hits the portal. Often some come back, but generally pretty much everyone enters the portal, and the new guy comes in, has to basically build a team from scratch. Creighton's not going to have to do that in a few years. They're going to, any high school guy who commits right now is going to know the deal. The guys currently on the team have a year or two to get comfortable with Alan Huss and get a feel for how things are going to operate when he's running things. I think that's a huge advantage in today's world of college basketball.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And, it's from the outside, it's a shocking move to do the whole coach in waiting and why would Creighton want to do that? Why would Alan Huss want to do that? But I think of the coaching carousel a lot like the NFL draft, and I guess any draft for that matter. If your guy is there, you go get your guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're Brett Veach and you think that the Saints are going to take Patrick Mahomes at 12, you trade up to 10.
Yeah.
So I'm always a believer in that. And so it's kind of, why would Creighton make this move now? Yeah. One, Marcus Blossom has shown that he's willing to allow coaches to pass the torch.
Yeah.
Did that with the coach in waiting for baseball with Ed Service and Mark Kingston. It wasn't a coach in waiting situation, but allowed Kirsten Bernthal Booth to give a very, very, very strong endorsement for Brian Rosen, and she passed the torch to him. And now another coach in waiting situation with McDermott and Huss. So you have that. 2, Creighton got its guy.
Yeah.
As I just kind of mentioned, you go get him if you know that's your guy. And 3, Alan Huss. Alan Huss told me that this was the only school in the country that he would step into this situation for.
I believe it.
And again, how couldn't he? Him and his wife met at Creighton.
Yeah.
He's a Creighton alum. He played for Dana Altman. He went to 3 NCAA tournaments, won a couple of Missouri Valley championships, and then he came back and had so much success as an assistant on McDermott's staff. And so he's a Blue Jay through and through. And he played for one historic coach and worked with another, and now Creighton has a plan in place for him to be the next.
It's crazy how long, the longevity of Creighton's coaches, that he played for Dana Altman and he'll be the head coach 2 removed from him.
Yeah. Isn't that insane?
Yeah. And I think we talked about this when Mac was his 300th win at Creighton or what?
This past season?
Yeah.
He passed Altman to become the program's all-time winningest coach.
Yeah. And how many wins was that roughly?
That's actually what I'm pulling up, if you could imagine that. I think it's like 327.
Yeah, because I remember we were saying on this pod, how many times does a program have 2 coaches who go back-to-back in winning 300-plus games?
I've got it.
327 on the money?
So 327 is what 328 to pass Altman. Okay, so 327 was the number. 328 to pass Altman. And this from a story that I wrote when I talked to Dana Altman in last year's NCAA tournament, right before Creighton and Oregon had that double overtime classic. Only 4 Power 6 schools, we're including the Big East here, have ever had a coach and their successor with 300-plus win 300-plus games. Kansas with Roy Williams and Bill Self. Michigan State with Judd Heathcote and Tom Izzo. Purdue with Gene and Painter, and now Creighton with Dana Altman and Greg McDermott.
Purdue was another coach in waiting situation.
It was. And Sam McEwen had a good story on that, breaking down some of the coach and waiting situations that have worked, hadn't worked. It had a Nebraska football twist at the end because he got insight from Dana Holgerson, who has a first-hand account of how a coach in waiting situation can play out. Newsflash, spoiler, the coach in waiting situation at Creighton will be nothing, and I mean nothing, like Dana Holgerson's experience watching that. So it's a huge move for Creighton that I think it's fair to say a program-defining move.
Yeah, I would say so too. I think not just for the kind of basic reasons of your hiring a coach, but to like make that much of like a stand of like, this is our guy, like this is our guy so much that we're willing to wait for him and he's willing to wait for us.
Yeah. This will be the last thing on it. All of this means is that we are now in the 11th hour of Greg McDermott's coaching career, which is nuts to say.
Yeah.
And it's expected to happen sometime in the next couple of seasons. Who knows? Who knows? We're approaching the end. That is the sun setting. That's very clear. It's like 3 p.m. on Greg McDermott's career.
3 p.m. What time of year is this taking
December.
place?
Well,
we're in
basketball
December?
season.
Okay,
So 3 p.m. the sun will set in a couple of hours, and we'll all slip into a seasonal depression. That's not the only head coach, or not the only assistant coach that a head coach hired this week, because in a much lesser scale, Nebraska added Pat Monahan to its staff late Wednesday, if I have my days correct.
You are correct.
We're recording this on Thursday afternoon.
Less than 24 hours ago.
And that was less than 24 hours
ago. 18 hours ago.
And I still can't keep track of the days, man.
Yeah.
Even in the offseason, they blur together. What are we doing? And now I don't even have games to like keep me on
that's
track.
The thing. I feel like they blur together even more in the offseason because we don't have that like.
I know that they're gonna play a game on Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
And we get in a really good rhythm.
Yeah. See, in the offseason, it's just like every week is just one like, what's 24 times 7? That many hour long day. Like it's just one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. I don't know where that takes us.
It takes us back to Pat Monahan, who will spend some time in a car or in a plane on his way
or a boat or a train.
I don't think you can take a boat from Wyoming to Nebraska. I don't know what body of water you would.
I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like them Wilson Miami. In one way or another, he'll be here.
He will be coming from Wyoming to Lincoln, Nebraska, and this is a move that was kind of a long time coming. Adam Howard left in mid to late March, but he left before the crown, so I think that kind of prevented Nebraska's like search from really getting started like in earnest until
because then you had to play.
Yeah,
then you had to coach.
Yeah,
down a coach.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but last night Nebraska got their guy. That became official this morning that Pat Monahan is joining Ernie Ziegler and Nate Lenzer as one of the 3 assistant coaches on Fred Hoiberg's staff. I think early impression sticks out to me that he's a Midwest guy.
Okay.
Because
that'll help.
It will because Adam Howard was a Southern guy.
Okay.
Hence, one of the reasons why he left to go to North Carolina State was to be closer to family. It was just a better opportunity for him in that regard.
And he doesn't have to really change his wardrobe that much.
Yeah, no, yeah, like same shade of red. Schools. Yeah, that's like before the 23-24 season, Connor Esigian was one of Wisconsin's reps at Big Ten Media Days, and he wore like a bright red suit. So if he represents Nebraska this year, he can just reuse the same suit.
Why not?
Yeah.
That's like his LeBron draft night suit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. But anyway, Yeah, I mean, Adam Howard played at Western Kentucky, was on a staff on a lot of schools like in the South. Those were his roots, That's where he had the biggest footprint. And now you replace him with Pat Monahan, who is very much a Midwestern guy. He's from Chicago. Most recently, he was at Wyoming, obviously, but that's his only time outside of the Midwest. Before that, it was Southern Illinois, UW Milwaukee, UW Green Bay, Division II, Minnesota State Mankato.
The Bulls or
the Mavericks.
The Mavericks.
Yeah.
It's a bull. Their logo.
Yeah, it was a lot like UNO.
Yeah, the purple and yellow.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. 2024 Division II national champs.
Yeah.
But I was about to sneeze. Achoo! But then I didn't. That's an example of what it would have sounded like if I had. But before that, director of ops at Loyola Chicago, assistant coach at Coffeyville Community College, not very far away from here.
Kansas, right?
Yeah. And the most local tie he's got to Nebraska, began his coaching career as a GA at Wayne State.
He's a Midwest guy.
Very, very Midwest. And that was a very long way of saying I think that will help Nebraska as far as recruiting goes.
I think so, too. Because you've got to recruit some Midwest boys to play in the Big Ten.
You do. And Nebraska's done that this offseason.
Yeah, no, they absolutely have. And
Price Sanford?
You've got to continue to do that.
Yeah.
And he's obviously going to help that. So will he? What's his strong suit? Is he going to help more on the recruiting side, or is he a schematic guy? What do you kind of see his role being as it pertains to Fred Hoiberg's staff?
I see him being a guy who helps in recruiting a lot. That was a thing, and that Fred Hoiberg mentioned in the statement. That was one of the early things. Is he's a good recruiter.
Has all those ties.
Yeah, he's got a lot of ties. And that's especially helpful. In today's world, and especially how Nebraska builds their team of, getting the Rink Mass and the Bryce Williams. This season it's the Kendall Blues. The guys who
Minnesota State guy, right? Kendall Blue.
He is from Minnesota. Yeah, he didn't play at Mankato. Okay. He played for St. Thomas.
St. Thomas. I knew it was a purple school.
Yeah,
close.
Yeah,
but all Minnesota.
Yeah, but so that's been a big part of how Nebraska has built these teams is finding guys who played for mid-major schools and kind of progressed out of them. So a guy with Pat Monahan's mid-major connections, those Wisconsin schools, Southern Illinois, I think that will be helpful in terms of like what his responsibilities will be like in practice on the court. Adam Howard's were like assisting Fred Hoiberg with the offense. The offense that's Fred's thing, but Adam helped with that. I know there are some players mentioned, Bryce Williams mentioning that Adam Howard is really good at drawing up sets. So because defense is Nate Lenzer.
Yeah, I think they're okay on defense.
Yeah,
I think they've got that figured out.
Ernie Ziegler works with the big guys. So that would be where where that would be. It make a little more of a dynamic when Fred is more of an offensive-minded head coach. But yeah, I think I think that'll be something that plays itself out a little more organically as just where he finds his fit in there.
I think so too.